We do have Congressman David Kustoff, a Republican representing the West Tennessee area. And this is a post from him on social media. He said, "The one big beautiful bill is everything we promised to the American people. Democrats are trying to derail the America First agenda, but the House GOP won't let them." I do want to bring in Congressman Kustoff to talk all about this here. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me today.
Of course. And first off, I did want to ask you overall your initial thoughts here as you're watching all of this play out in the Senate, this quote unquote vote-a-rama.
Yeah. Well, democracy is messy, and we're seeing that live in action. We've seen it for the past month or so. I'll remind people who are watching that about a month ago, a little over a month ago, the House passed our version of the One Big Beautiful Bill. The Senate has been debating it and contemplating it now for several weeks. But the fact of the matter is, this bill, whether it's the House version, the Senate version, it pretty much captures what President Trump campaigned on in 2024, making sure that the 2017 tax cuts, which were so beneficial to people across the country, that they become permanent. Because if this bill that you see the Senate debating on right now doesn't pass, all those tax cuts expire at the end of the year. So that'll be a huge tax increase to the American people. But it's also President Trump's border policy that he talked about all throughout 2024 and campaigned on in 2024, the energy policy that President Trump campaigned on last year. All those elements are in the One Big Beautiful Bill. So to me, that election in 2024 was a mandate from the American people to President Trump, to the United States Senate, to the House of Representatives, people like me. Let's get this codified into law. Let's make sure that it benefits the American people.
What do you think it is about the One Big Beautiful Bill that has some Republicans, just a handful of them, voting no here? Because we saw a few senators that were Republican that did vote against it. So what are your thoughts there? What is it about the bill that has them saying no?
You know, there are some that say, look, we should be cutting more than what the One Big Beautiful Bill does. I will note that the version that passed the House will cut about $1.6 trillion over 10 years. That is significant. That is real. That's out of mandatory programs. You do have some that look at what we have talked about in terms of cutting fraud and waste and abuse from programs like Medicaid that will save the American taxpayer. There's some of my Republican brethren that are concerned about that. There's a really wonky policy, SALT, state and local taxes, that 7 years ago, 8 years ago, we capped at $10,000 that would save over $1 trillion over 10 years. What we worked on in the House will raise those caps on SALT to $40,000. Of course, the Senate is working on their own version of SALT, and there's some of my brethren from states like California and New York that are concerned about not raising the cap enough in their view. So I get all that. But to my conservative brethren in the Senate and the House, and my moderate brethren in the House and the Senate, I would say, don't let the enemy of perfect be good or what have you. I get that for some it doesn't do enough or may do too much, but if it does 60 or 70 or 80% of what you want it to do, that's really good. And you can work on the other later on. Look, President Trump has told us he would like to sign this and get it on his desk by July the 4th. We've known that for quite some time. Let's get it past the finish line in the Senate. We'll vote on it in the House Wednesday or maybe even Thursday. Let's get it done and let's deliver for the American people.
And that's kind of my next question here is that July 4th deadline possible? Can you meet that deadline based on what you're seeing play out there in the Senate?
You know, we can still get it done by then, and I think we likely will. Now, if it were to slip by a day or two or three or four or five, that is not such a bad thing. But one thing in the one big beautiful bill that's important, and there are a lot of things that are important. Number one, it removes uncertainty for individuals so that they know how to plan, and also for small business and for our family farms. But in the one big beautiful bill, we do raise the debt ceiling. And as we know, the Treasury Secretary has said that we're going to hit the debt ceiling soon, within the next month to 2 months or so. And if we don't get this passed, the markets and credit rating agencies are going to take a look. And they're going to say that's not good for business. That's not good for the U.S. government, and ultimately not good for the American taxpayer and consumer. So uh, when we pass the one big beautiful bill, it will raise the debt ceiling, and ultimately that'll be good for the financial markets and for everybody who plans. It'll get rid of that uncertainty.
And one thing we've seen is that the bill does put a significant amount of funding into defense and the border there. To the opposing side, the people who are against all of this, tell them why this is all so important, especially right now, in your opinion.
So I'm really glad you raised that border issue, because I think if you asked President Trump, he would say that the number one issue that he saw talking to people all across the country was making sure our border was secure. And you look at the numbers of people crossing illegally last year in 2024 compared to now, where they were so significant last year, and now they are really down, along with the deportations. That was really important to the American people. Now, I keep thinking about, in the election, the talk about all those swing states, the 7 swing states. President Trump won all of those swing states. That border issue was paramount to voters in those swing states and all across the nation. So it does a lot of good. And when you think about the one big beautiful bill, allowing the border wall to be completed, allowing for more border control agents to be hired across the country, and also paying them more money, that's a win. And I don't think it matters whether you're Republican, Democrat, or independent. It speaks to all those people, all the voters across the nation.
And kind of going in reverse a little bit, my last question for you. We know that a lot of people have brought up the fact that the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office says this would increase the deficit by about $3.3 trillion over the next decade. What do you say to people who are maybe concerned about that, and that could potentially be one of their big holdups?
So I would say that the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, really historically does not do a good job of capturing future growth, by making the tax cuts permanent, by giving that certainty to small business and family farms. In my district, I've got the largest ag district in the state of Tennessee, and also medium-sized business and large businesses, that the growth is going to be exponential. And just like they're not capturing it now when they score this bill, they also didn't do that in 2017. So we saw revenues go up to the U.S. Treasury 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24. They forecasted being down. Now, what happened is spending also went up a lot during those first 2 Biden years, when Democrats had absolute control of government, the White House, the Senate, the House. So let's take the uncertainty out. Let's provide growth for individuals and for businesses across the country, so that the economy can zoom just like it did during the 4 years of Trump 1.0.
Hey, Congressman Kustoff, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here. Anything else you want to add about any of this here before I let you go?
Well, I would say to those people who are watching, do let your congressmen and senators know how you feel. I mean, that's a benchmark of how I vote. I measure how people tell me how they want me to vote versus what's good and what's in the best interest of the nation. this is going to be, for I think most members of the House of Representatives and for the Senate, one of the most consequential votes that they will take during the courses of their career.
All right, Congressman, thank you again for taking the time to be here with us. We appreciate it.